directly, or you're a customer of vendor provided services, in which you may not need to do any work at all. But if you are a customer, I would encourage you to speak to your ad tech vendor to understand their plans and how you can get involved. So I've got like 10 seconds to go. So this is just a quick summary. Please have a think about your use cases and how they are or might be impacted. Think about if you're an implementer, think about when you might wish to test, provide your input. If you're a customer, do ask your vendors about their plans and advocate for your needs. But regardless of your role, please do come and join the public dialogue either through W3C or GitHub, and monitor Chrome communication channels for progress updates. And these are 2 resources, and we'll put the links in the chat as well. Eve is going to take care of that for me. And also, we have a new developer blog, which I hope you all find useful, and stay tuned for more updates as we go through the year. Thank you so much for your attention.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm going to invite my own panel now to turn on their cameras and introducing you all very quickly. So I'm delighted to have Chris Gordon, Head of AdOps and Programmatic at Media House, David Murphy, Head of Digital Strategy at the Irish Times, Alan Tinker, Head of Platform Development and Lead for Privacy and Identity at Quantcast, Stephanie Barry, Programmatic and Ad Tech Director at Core, and finally, last but not least, Rebecca Trevor, Advertising Brand Manager at Leia Healthcare. You're all really welcome. We're going to get straight into the questions because in this panel, we're really looking at the environment and where we are right now. And, the deprecation of third-party cookies has been mentioned. We know as an industry, there's been much consolidation, much change. And indeed, for publishers, there have been many challenges in terms of the value exchange, providing free quality content in this environment. So really my first question, David Murphy, is for you. In an environment such as this, and with increased regulation, self-regulation and legislation, how does a publisher raise its game to meet these challenges?
Well, the short answer is with great difficulty, but let me elaborate and I suppose give you the publisher's perspective on this. So for publishers, and especially those with a legacy media product, there is an urgency to accelerate our focus on data as a method of increasing our digital advertising revenues. And that's simply because digital advertising is essential to supporting our content now and into the future. While mass reach campaigns will always have a place in this world, there's a significant need from advertisers, especially SMEs, to be able to serve relevant advertising to the right people at the right time in the right place. Typically, it results in more effective and better performing advertising campaigns for them. And the fact is, media wastage isn't an option for many of those smaller businesses. Every euro spent really needs to work for them. We also have a responsibility to ensure that any and all data collected is done so in a legally compliant way. We need to make sure that the collection and transmission of data and consent works in a very complex digital advertising supply chain. And we also need to make sure that we are enabling our readers to make informed decisions on how their data is being used and for what purposes, and trying to do that without disrupting their experience too much. Now, that's kind of a lot to balance and get right, but it is really essential that we're able to do that, that we can offer solid and effective digital advertising solutions. Obviously, we want to meet and exceed our readers' expectations in how their data is being used and protect them from any potential bad actors in the supply chain. Not to mention the potential and severe legal consequences if we get it wrong. And kind of as has been mentioned, you combine all of that with the death of the third-party cookie and limitations on first-party cookies. It is hugely challenging. And for many of us, adjusting to all of this means making very significant investments and changes to our ad tech. Now, making sure that data collection piece is compliant and responsible does come at a great expense. While the cost of the consent management platforms isn't that significant, there are many low-cost options and even really good free systems available. But there's still a lot of work needed to configure and deploy CMPs on websites and mobile apps. We need to have people responsible for administering those systems and making sure that they are working as intended. Data protection assessments need to be carried out by informed individuals. who not only understand the regulations, but also have an understanding of the nuances of the analytics and advertising ecosystems. But look, in saying all of that, self-regulation, legislation, and standards are a good thing. Without them, the continued growth of the industry isn't sustainable. Most of us are already committed to the ASAI standards for digital advertising. And also many of us are getting gold standard certified so we can provide advertisers with additional assurances around the quality of our inventory. The IAB standards, and especially the transparency and consent framework, along with the certification of the different consent management platforms, have made the GDPR compliance part easier for publishers. But unfortunately, it's not a set it and forget it type of scenario. Staff upskilling and active management is required. So like, how do publishers meet these challenges? It's adequate resourcing and training combined with the appropriate technology, and universal standards is how we're meeting the challenges. Like, it is a lot of effort, but it is very worthwhile.
Okay, well, I think that's a very important perspective, and I think equally important in all of these discussions. And I suppose if we're in terms of the audience that are listening to us today, you know, the voice of the advertiser is a really important voice in terms of, you know, seeking change. And turning to you now, Rebecca, and your role for Laya Healthcare and protecting your users' privacy, could you share, you know, what your brand's perspective is in relation to that?
Absolutely. And to be fair, I think David has touched on a lot of the things that we think about as well. So it's definitely the assurance is what we look for. It's super challenging at the moment to strike that balance between best class compliance and then making sure we're super effective in our targeting, making sure we're making all those euros spend. So from our own perspective, like, we are a regulated entity, so we're a financial property. We have to abide by the central bank, the CPC, the ASAI. So we have all of those standards. And then we need to remain really effective in our targeting. So what we kind of, I suppose, pride ourselves in is we have a super informed team. We have internal compliance functions. We have a privacy function. We have fantastic agencies around us who are experts in their fields. But we also, I suppose, and most recently, are a brand supporter of the IAB gold standard. So that's been huge for us to be at the cusp of anything that's emerging and staying top of standard, basically. So I suppose it's nothing new, it's constantly changing, and in the interest of the consumer as well. So it's all the right thing to do. But the gold standard has given us that opportunity to really collaborate and be, as I said, at that kind of the cutting edge of anything that's emerging. So it helps us navigate what's going on and staying on top of things in the digital advertising space. So that's it from Laya, really. Yeah.
Good. And then Stephanie, you know, from an agency perspective, Core, we're the first media agency in Ireland to be gold standard certified. And why did you, you know, take that step and investment really to become gold standard certified?
Yeah, so for anyone that might have missed your intro, I'll just start by explaining what the purpose of it is, which is to tackle the 4 biggest concerns in digital marketing, which are brand safety, fraud, user experience, and GDPR. So for Core, the certification really was a recognition for us and our high standards in these areas. And for our clients, we wanted to be able to create layers of trust between agencies, publishers, and our tech companies. So gold standard really means that our clients are protected, and brands are definitely going to contribute to a better experience online. As we heard with the ASCI earlier, we need to ensure that the same standards for traditional media are replicated in digital. So when it launched, we said, let's go for it. We created a gold standard team and put a lot of work into getting certified. We've seen that the gold standard has been really successful in the UK, so we hope to see that replicated here in Ireland. And based on the long list involved already, it has been. So congratulations to you, Suzanne and Maeve, and thanks so much for your support throughout the process. And most importantly, thanks to our clients who supported us with all of our initiatives over the last number of years.
Great. And I think the important point to make from this, because, you know, I think if having listened to the self-regulatory and standards panel, is to say, as an industry, you know, we are very aware that there's more work to be done, and that, you know, given the complexity of this ecosystem, it is so important to have all stakeholders engaged, because solutions are not going to be possible if it's just from one perspective or another. And certainly in terms of the future legislation being made as well, it's something that, you know, we are very passionate about as an organization, is to assist legislators, because there can be many unintended consequences of legislation meant to achieve very positive you know, protections for users, which actually can create slightly negative or certainly annoying effects. And that leads me very nicely to my question really for you, Alan. And, you know, there's been a lot of debate, and I think we can all relate to that the cookie consent massive fatigue, exhaustion, if you like, at this point. And we know that, you know, overseas, in the UK, the DPC equivalent, the ICO, is looking at this area now and potentially looking at making changes in that respect. And just would be interested, from a major ad tech company, US and Europe-wide, what is your perspective on potential solutions to cookie fatigue?
Yeah, and I want to keep echoing what we're all saying, especially I think Alex said it in his panel, that, yeah, I was there at the very beginning when we, you know, Quantcast were very involved in the creation of the IAB TCF, and it was huge number of people getting involved, coming up with a solution, putting it out to market. I spent a year going out to agencies, publishers, the industry, trying to get them to understand what we were trying to do, and it was a huge effort. But I'm also a consumer of the internet in Europe, and I also know how annoying pop-ups are. You know, that's the whole thing. You know, that we have, in a way, ruined the experience of browsing. But it's not as simple as just saying, let's get rid of those cookie pop-ups, because they're doing a job. They're providing transparency, they're providing choice, they're letting people make those choices to a granular level, which is the requirements of the GDPR. So we're in a catch-22. And even the ICO have told us, I've been at events and I've spoken to the ICO, and they're very much saying this, is they're asking on one hand for that granularity and that control, but on the next hand, they're going, but make it really simple and easy. Those two don't match right now. So we have to, as an industry, work forward and move forward with the help of privacy groups, with the help of other, you know, the browsers, etc. We have to evolve. But the idea, in my personal opinion, of giving that control and getting rid of the cookie banners or the CMPs and handing it over to a small number of browsers to take control comes with a lot of problems as well, because you put the control of the message in the hands of very few. And we see it right now with Apple. You know, you see it with their tracking. When it comes to Apple, their terminology is personalization when it relates to Apple, but when it relates to anyone else, it's tracking. So, yeah, and then you can decide whether that's right or wrong, that's their business, but they, you know, they make these decisions. So currently, David and Chris and the publishers, they have that relationship with their user. So they should be in control of how they ask that message. So a real challenge is going to be coming is, how do we have a unified message that could be controlled by certain entities, but everybody's happy with the way it's being asked, and it's being asked in a fair way, in a transparent, granular, etc. way. And I think we also have to keep remembering that the ownership of consent does not live with the browser, with the publisher, with the advertiser, with ad tech. It is the user's choice. And the user has to have that ability to make that choice. Right now, it's going to a site, and it should be being able to accept, decline, and move on. But have we made it a bit too easy for people just to accept and not think about what their data is being used for? I think there's something in that. But do we also want to then have them going through sheets and sheets of privacy documents to make their decisions? I don't think they want to do that. So yeah, I wish I had the answer. I think but what I do think is just handing it over to the browsers as the easy solution of let the browsers make the decision for everybody. I don't believe that is the right way to go currently.
Okay, I think this is something that we will have to return to. And as I said, and I've said a number of times, what we've really wanted to do is to give an overview of where we are as an industry and look at some of the questions in an overview capacity, because this is our first forum, and we will do further deep dive and come back to these subjects. And we also know that there will be changes and it will evolve, and these conversations are happening, and the ICO is looking at it. I'm sure our own DPC is looking at this question also. You know, industry wants the experience for user to be better as much as regulators do, and you know, we really do need to work in tandem to improve the situation, and I think we are committed to doing that. A question now, firstly, to put to you, Chris Gordon, from a publisher perspective, is that we've heard this a number of times, and there's a lot of jargon used in industry, and I'm very aware of that. I've come from a multimedia background, and you know, we speak of targeted advertising, okay, and it's almost like a tainted word at this point, while targeting what has always been a term used in marketing from old school marketing. But if we speak of personalization, okay, which is what we're really speaking of, do you think that personalization and privacy are mutually exclusive?
Thanks, Suzanne. Well, it is a bit of an awkward one, to be honest with you. So I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. So if we're looking at the industry today, I suppose the tools we now have available, you know, around brand safety, around contextualization, making sure that ads fall in the right environment, well, they're becoming even more sophisticated, you know, day by day, which is good for the industry because it strengthens our abilities to serve these ads in those, as I said, right environments for the right target audience. So using those same methods, as I say, we are able to create target segments without actually using any real personal data to target these users. And not just target them, but target them with relevant advertising, which I feel is a far better experience instead of being served something completely random, which is of absolute no interest to you. So to me, target advertising is relevant advertising and something that has come a long, long way in the digital evolution. And the benefits in return, as mentioned, we're able to provide the advertiser with a safe environment where their ads are going to display, but not only display, but to their target audience. So there's no wastage in effect. So when we talk about growing international momentum on banning target advertising, I would dread to see what the landscape would look like if we ever did go down that route. We could very well be sleepwalking into a bad place, which would just deem a lot of the tools which are now available today obsolete in many cases, which I don't think we want at all. And some of these tools too, I might mention, they don't come cheap either. You know, publishers have to invest heavy in such tools, which are recognized, which needs to be recognized across the market. I might say we're bound by GDPR, so whilst respecting the user's rights, our systems have to be fully compliant. Again, all added costs which come through the evolution of the digital space. I haven't even mentioned, you know, the third-party cookies disappearing. So what technologies are we going to use then? You know, who's going to win that race in terms of identity solutions? I will mention too that the IAB Gold Standard certification is something that I do think is a very good thing for the industry. It instills confidence in buyers, which can only be a good thing. And from a media house point of view, we're absolutely very proud to be a part of that. So we have come a long way, of course, and things have improved over the last 18 months. Media House itself has moved to a subscription model. So it's a company that takes a lot of pride in their journalism and believes in providing a high quality standard in that regard. So they very highly value the product of journalism. Again, so to help maintain that quality journalism, advertising plays a big part, and a bigger part of that is targeted advertising. So these things kind of go hand in hand in many respects. I just believe that targeted advertising is commonly accepted trade-off users recognize when they're browsing the web, but may not fully appreciate. So in closing, really, so what we need is more education and understanding on such things. It's an industry that's continuously updating, so keeping up with the latest and greatest is always a challenge, but it's definitely one that we should always embrace.
And Alan, just from your perspective as well, you know, Quantcast represents, you know, so many different diverse, you know, companies, if you like. You know, as I mentioned earlier, Daniel Knapp's paper speaks of SMEs, startups, a lot of niche businesses that are vital, and they're vital to the Irish economy as much as Europe, really. It's what much of our economy is based on. They're they're very reliant on advertising that's going. They have not got money to waste doing mass campaigns. They really need advertising that's relevant to hit people that would be potentially interested in their services or products. So what is your view in relation to that debate between personalization and privacy, Alan?
Yeah, and I think we keep saying it. If we can do things that respect people's privacy and they've got the choice on how their data is being used and it's very transparent, then we're in a good place. The idea that targeting is automatically assumed to mean data and mean bad things is not always the case. Publishers have a very good relationship with their users. They can understand information about their users. They can understand in a contextual way. They can understand in a way that doesn't require third-party cookies or other tracking technology. And you can target an individual with a relevant message at the right time that doesn't need to have huge amounts of data attached to it. So this whole concept of targeting equals data, I think, is wrong. So David, he's talked really well about that SME, that they only want to find, they haven't got money to spend everywhere. They've got a small pocket of Europe that they want to target and they want to go against. And it might be that they are looking for people in the catering industry. So they start looking, they target more areas where they're likely to be. And that doesn't require data all the time. So I think we've just got to, the whole industry is moving forward. Everybody is moving. We're not standing still. We're not sticking it, our feet, drawing a line in the sand and going, we're not going any further. We're all looking for how we do this properly. On Quantcast, the things we're looking at around contextual, we're looking at things around bringing publishers and advertisers closer together, removing the requirement of third-party cookies. So, the internet is not free. The internet is powered by something, and it's powered by advertising that pays for journalists, that pays for the great video content that we see, the premium inventory and the premium content. That needs to continue. And otherwise the internet, well, the alternative is lots of paywalls and people having to pay for content. So, so I think we just got to find ways to make it work. But the days of just taking whatever data you want, the days are numbered, and I think all of us on this call would agree with that. And I don't think anybody would say that is not the case.
Indeed, and I think again, speaking of our own DPC, and I remember in the very early days and in presentations, our industry was encouraged to look at privacy by design, and and I think that's a really important concept. It is something that we at IAB would always be encouraging our members, and as users, all of us, we want to partner with, to experience companies that value our time and our engagement online. And I think increasingly users will be making those choices, and those companies that do show that best in class and adhering to standards like the gold standard, and seeking to and investing on an ongoing basis in terms of their systems, I really truly believe they will be the companies that will be rewarded, because users are rightly so valuing their own privacy and their own data. We've got maybe 1 minute, Stephanie, and I just wanted to give you a final word as an agency in relation to that sort of debate as well.
Yeah, of course. And the good news is that we're all on the same page here today. My view is that we can respect privacy and deliver personalization. But so long as people know exactly what they're signing up for, when we're running ad campaigns, it needs to be clear that people are getting a benefit from sharing their data. And if they don't understand that, we need to do a better job as an industry at explaining that, because personalization is so important. Relevant ads lead to a better experience online, and the research backs that up over and over. 90% of consumers say that ads relevant to them that aren't relevant to them are annoying. So unfortunately, some tech companies aren't doing a good job at explaining our privacy at the moment. And really at some point that will all blow up in people's faces.
Okay, I think it is good that we're on the same page. I do hope that this has been very useful debate, and thank you all for your time. We will return to the subject.